You've made a test, earned an assessment. Now what do you do? We open up Edulastic. We come over here to the left again, click on Test, created by me, and let's find the test that we want to assign or to set the settings. Click on it and click on Details or Edit. I'll click on Edit. The 4 tabs are always your best friend. Here are my questions in the test. I only have one question, that's all right. If I want this to be a 2-point question, I can just change the questions here, 3, 4-point, whatever. Okay. If I had a bunch of questions here and I wanted to take this test, I could just go to View a Student, and this is what the students would see. Okay, so it's ready to assign. Before I assign it up here, I need to change all my settings. So click on Settings. We'll say this is a class assessment. If you had instructions, please make sure to answer all questions. You can put instructions here. Release scores. If you release the scores only, as soon as the students are finished, they'll be able to see their scores. Release scores and their answers. Release scores, their answers, and the correct answers. This would really depend on the grade and whether or not your kids would cheat if there's other classes and you gave them the correct answers. They can go tell the other periods the answers. So that depends on you and your classes. You do whatever works for you, but I'm going to leave it as release scores only. Evaluation method. If you remember, I'll come up here to review. I made this 4 points. We'll say it's a 4-part question. So I'm going to give partial credit for that one. Don't penalize for incorrect selection. So let's pretend that that question had 4 correct answers. If they got 3 of the 4 correct, they would still get 75%, and they would not lose for missing an incorrect selection. So we'll leave it as partial credit and don't penalize. Markers done automatically. Timed test, probably not. Maximum attempts 1. Check answer tries 0. You would want check answer tries per question, maybe 1 or twice if this was practice and they could go through until they got the right answer. But because this is an assessment or a test, I'm going to leave it as 0. I don't need a calculator. I don't have a rubric. I don't have any hints, but I'll just leave it on because it's not a big deal. I don't have a reference material like periodic table or equations or things like that. I always leave this as is. Anti-cheating, again, these two depend on your class and probably the age of the kids. Shuffle items would change the questions per kid. For instance, one kid could have question 1 about plate tectonics. Another kid could have question 1 about seismic waves. Another kid could have question 1 about convection currents. Shuffle answer choice. This would shuffle A, B, C, D, etc. within each question for each kid. So because this is an 8th grade test where I have multiple class periods, I want to make sure that they don't cheat. So I'm going to shuffle the questions and then shuffle the answers within those questions. You do not need a password, and I'll show you why in a minute. Complete test in one sitting, I always leave as off just in case a kid doesn't finish in time. Restrict navigation out of test. Again, this is for your class, depending on their age or their ability to navigate out of the Chromebook or the computer and go onto websites to look up the answers. If you don't think they're going to go out and look up the answers or cheat in any way, leave this as disabled. If you think they might, you might want to warn and block it, which means if they clicked off of the test, it would pause their test, and then you would manually have to unpause it from your computer. Restrict question navigation. This would mean once they skip a question, they cannot go back. Save exam browser. You don't need this because kids are going to be doing it on Chromebooks or their own Chromebook or their own laptop. Answer on paper. I leave this as off. And then choose test interface. You're going to go to Ohio State test or whatever test you use. Unless you're a principal or your administration or whomever wants you to change these, or if you have it for your own grade level, my recommendation is don't change them. Okay. So once you have all these how you like them, instead of redoing them every time, you can come up here and save them. And we'll call them awesome test settings. So every time I make a test and I want these settings, I just come up here and click on awesome test settings. Okay. Now before I assign it, I can review it again, or I can add more items or whatever. If I'm scared that my computer is going to log me off or the Wi-Fi is going to go out, you can always just come up and click save. Sometimes this number 1 here doesn't register, so let me type that in again. Okay, and now I can save it. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to assign it now. Even though this test might not be for a couple of weeks, I'm still going to assign it. Now, when I do this, I'm going to select my class, and I don't have any classes, but you would select your classes that you've already synced it from Google Classroom. Period 1, period 2, period 3, whatever. An open date and close date really don't matter because we're going to open it manually in class and we're going to close it manually in class. This is also the reason you don't need a password. So on test day, the kids will sit down. I'll make sure they all open up their Chromebook. And once they're all logged into Edulastic or they've clicked on the link through Google Classroom, I will click the open button. And at the end of class, I will actually pause the test. Okay? So this is why you don't need a password. Also, when I hit the assign button, it'll go right into their Google Classroom. Again, I don't have any classes selected because I don't have any classes. But it'll go right into their Google Classroom. They cannot do the test. They cannot start the test. They can't do anything to the test because, again, it will not be opened until you manually do it in class. All right? So after you've created the test, go through all of these. You can double check all of the settings that we just did right here if you want. If not, you just go ahead and click assign and it would go right into their Google Classroom.